God's ways are always better. It's something that my pops would tell me all the time, and I would think that, yeah, pops, but this situation, this scenario, it calls for my intelligence, my wisdom, my experience. And he would always say, and he would just chuckle and laugh. He wouldn't try and press it on me, anything like that. He would just say, God's ways are always better. But see, I always tried to figure it out. And trying to figure things out a lot of times takes the magic out of the moment. And, I had no idea at all that some of the things, some of the principles that my pops and my mom would impart would be foundational things that could help me along in my journey throughout the rest of time. And when I first started in the professional beauty industry, my parents had always told me that, there's only one business in the world and one business only, and that's the people business. That's what my pops would say. My mom would always talk about being good to people, doing the right thing. They would always talk about these things, and I was like, yeah, but how does it apply in this specific area? Well, as I went through, it was just about making friends and connecting. And I remember being, early on in my career, and I got the opportunity to work for one of the most iconic hairdressers in the world, Robert Cromeans, which, when I say I got the opportunity, I went after it, right? So for 2.5 years, I would sit in the front of every single show that I could go to all around the country. And when we would get done, everyone would go and they would swarm the stage, and I would just wait. And then I would pass them my card. I'd wait to talk to them. My name is Kelly Cardenas. I'd love to work with you someday. Well, 2.5 years later, I actually get the opportunity to be able to work with him. Well, I'm in this job, and now it's exposing me to a whole different world. I get to walk in not with my own reputation, but upon the reputation of somebody who already has laid a foundation in the industry that everybody respects. And it wasn't about them knowing what my name was. It was just I was able to walk in because I had third-party credibility because I'm hanging out with the best in the world. Well, being at some of these hair shows, these conventions, you would meet different people, but I didn't know who the people were. And my parents always taught me not to be a respecter of persons or their positions, but just to be able to connect with people. Well, I remember connecting with this one guy. His name is Luke, and we connected. We laughed, and he's off to the side of the stage. He's like a larger than life figure, gray beard, very jovial guy. But what I noticed after a little bit of time of spending with him is I was so excited to see Luke, my friend who I'd met at the shows, and I could see that as I started to notice, there was people around him that started to tighten up a little bit. And maybe they stood a little taller. They tried to say certain things. Sometimes they stepped out of character. And I always wondered, I was very curious until I found out why they were doing it. Well, I want to encourage you today because God's ways are always better. When we do the right thing, when we're locked into the people, when we're locked into the moment, God can create the magic around us. And that magic sometimes will come through people. For me, it came through a guy named Luke. And, years later, he impacted my life in an incredible, incredible way. And it just reiterated what Proverbs 16 talks about. It reminds us that if we're trying, then we're not letting. And this is what my pops would say, boy, if you're trying, you're not letting. We can make all the plans in the world, although when we allow him to work, the results will have a pinch yourself payoff. And Luke, I want to thank you so much. And I want to honor you and honor every piece of not only advice, but the example that I got to see in you. And I had no idea when we first met. And I'm so glad that I didn't, because I probably would have been a little bit intimidated by all the things, not only that you have done, but the person that you are. So why don't we get this party started?
Nothing more on my mind. I got 2 shines, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over. again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
I'm excited because I get to talk about one of my buddies, one of my friends. He calls me buddy all the time, and so I guess I could call him buddy. But Luke, I want to thank you so much for impacting my life the way that you did and still do. Even though we don't get a chance to spend that much time together, what you did. What you have done for not only myself, for my family, for an industry, for so many people is incredible. See, my pops would always say to me, if you're trying, boy, you're not letting. And there was times where I would try and I would push things and things like that. And then I found that in my life, all of the magic happened when I wasn't pushing. It was when I was being myself, when I was making friends, and then those friends turned out to be like, I mean, unreal. With a Luke, right? And when I told you this, I had met him, I think I was 21 years old. So I had my dream job at 21. It's not because it fell into my lap. It's because I chased it for 2.5 years, like I was talking about earlier, passing out cards, being in the front row, all those things. And then when I finally got the opportunity, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It actually came with a substantial pay cut. Took a pay cut of what was it, 6/7. If I broke my income down into 7 pieces, I got one of those 7 pieces, and I moved across the country to the most expensive place in the world, which was here in San Diego. But it gave me the opportunity to take the lid off or take the roof off. Where I think I would have been capped where I was in Memphis, I got the opportunity to be able to come here. And when I came to San Diego and I got the chance to work with Robert Cromeans and Margaret Cromeans, and they had already had this reputation in the industry that they were the top. And so I got exposed to people that I never would have understood. I had so many different pinch me moments. But when you're in that place and you have your dream job at 21, you really have a scenario where you almost are forced to be present because you're freaking out every single moment because there's something that's a pinch me. Well, I didn't realize that the meeting Luke was going to be a pinch me moment until later, because he was Luke to me. He was the guy with the gray beard, again, jovial, larger than life, just so nice and calming. He would ask you questions. He was, excited about what you were doing. I had no idea what he did. But when I started to see the people tighten up, I started to ask myself, like, who is this guy, Luke? Well, I found out later that Luke, my friend, was the CEO and president of Paul Mitchell. And he had also taken Paul Mitchell from, a couple of $1 million a year in revenue when he came on to in the multi-billions, helped to build the Paul Mitchell School Network all across the country to become the Harvard of hair schools. He also was very instrumental in working with JP in all his different projects, including one that's called Patron that, JP ended up selling Patron for $5.1 billion. And when I asked Luke years later about it, I said, what would your job title be? He just laughed and he said, I'm the guy who gets stuff done for JP. And it was so humble. It was there was so much humility in it, and it wasn't like he was trying to say this is what I. He was just saying no, it's just what I do. Like it's not in his head. He was like it's not that big of a deal. Consigliere, I guess that's how consigliere is what we joked about. He just is. He's the guy for that guy, and. So with Luke, my relationship with him, again, it would have freaked me out if I would have learned first off that he was the president and CEO of Paul Mitchell. Although, I kind of backed off of that, or I didn't focus on that part of it because I didn't know it. So we just became friends over the years. And then when I found out, I was floored, but he still was Luke to me. And if you've met Luke Jacobellis, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This guy is an absolute, force of nature, global treasure, but not in his own mind. He's a guy who is very, very good at what he does. He asks questions, and he is probably one of the most effective leaders that I've ever seen in my life. And what I noticed with this, as I sat down, I sat down on the 16th, And on the 16th, it was Proverbs 16. It reminds us that, what my pop said, which was, boy, if you're trying, you're not letting. And we can make all the plans in the world. I could have made all the plans in the world, which I did at 21, but I had no idea that a guy with a gray beard that was very interested in what I was doing, as opposed to trying to get me interested in what he was doing, that he would literally change my life and change the trajectory of my career. It was wild. So let's go through this, because I want to show you what Proverbs 16 talks about, this trying and letting. So in verse 1 to 9:25, your plans are cute, God's plans are gangster. And I think that God is almost laughing at us a lot of times and saying that literally all it takes is just one introduction to one person and things can change. But God could do that, and he could do that in an instant, but he wants us just to be present in that moment, loving on people, doing the right thing for the right reasons, and the right things will turn out. But when you're focused on the end result and you're doing anything that you possibly can to be able to get to that end result, a lot of times you miss the magic of the moment. And so I want to encourage all of you. There's someone in your business today, there's someone in your relationships that you're going to come across that literally can shift things. This is what happened. And I'll tell you the story a little bit later about how literally a text message changed my whole entire business. So in verse 3 is, why wouldn't you choose number one? And I wrote down Jordan, Curry, or Brady. If you were playing basketball and you had the opportunity to have Jordan on your team or Curry on your team, and you got to pick first, why wouldn't you pick them? And what God is saying is, I'm number one. If you were playing football and you had the opportunity to pick a quarterback in their prime, why wouldn't you pick Brady? Unless you're just a hater. Like, why wouldn't you do that? It would be silly. And what God is saying is, I'm number one. I could take you to the place where you need to go. Even better, I could take you to so many pinch me moments that it'll blow your mind. But I just want you to pick me. That's all it is. And in verse 4, God is constantly at work, even when you don't see it. And I wrote especially then. Sometimes we don't see God's love. We don't see his power. We don't see his grace. We don't see that right in front of us. We're just seeing our circumstances, the things that we don't have. This was the thing that my brother talked to me about the other day. He said the challenge with me, and he knocks me up inside the head a lot of times. He said the challenge with you, man, is a lot of times you're focused on the things that you don't have as opposed to things that you have. And I had to sit for a second and I asked myself, do I have a beautiful wife? Yes. Do I have a beautiful son? Yes. Do I have an incredible daughter that's absolutely beautiful and talented? Yes. Do they love me? Yes. Do I love them? Yes. Then everything else will work out. And I had to sit in that for a second because he called me to the table, and I want to thank you, Rob, for doing that. You always have the tendency to call me to the table and do that, which I think is amazing. In verse 5, 8, and 5, 18, and 19 is ego. In this order, watch this. Ego, then pride, and then silliness. Ego, pride, and then silliness. First of all, you get puffed up. I shouldn't be doing this. I should be in a different place. I've done this all the time. Then we get prideful and say that, oh, wow, I shouldn't be doing these little things. I should be in a different place. And then silliness happens, which is the absence of wisdom. It's working without the right use of knowledge. And when that happens and silliness comes in, silly results happen. And this is, I tell you, it's a pattern. Watch it. Watch your ego. If your ego starts to come, then pride is coming next. And when pride comes, you put those two together, they have a party. It's going to be a silly, a group of silliness that's going to happen. In verse 6, 27, 28, 29, and 30 is love and faithfulness and fear of God are superpowers that provide an unfair advantage. If you had Curry on your team, it's an unfair advantage. He got hurt during the quarterfinals, or the semifinals. Was that semis? Yeah, it was the semis. He got hurt. And when he got hurt, you almost knew that the Timberwolves were going to win during that time. But when he's healthy, it gives you an unfair advantage. When Brady's on your team, unfair advantage. When Jordan's on your team, unfair advantage. What God is saying is, if you want an unfair advantage in your life, just have love and faithfulness and then fear of God, which is the respect of God. And that will give you an unfair advantage in all areas of life. In verse 7 and 26, when you have God on your side, there's nothing your opponent can do. It is like having access to the answers. Let me go here. Access to the answers for all the tests. And I think about myself with Spanish class because I tried to do this. I set myself up. I actually did well on a Spanish class, and my teacher's name was Miss Looney. But Miss Looney, I want to apologize to you. Actually, I want to say that you should give me some sort of reward because I thought this was creative. What I did is I went and got a piece of Scotch tape from her desk. She watched me do it. I asked her for it. She gave it to me. I had a person from the period before in Spanish. We had a test, and they gave me the answers to the test. Well, I took the piece of Scotch tape. I held it against the chair of the kid that was sitting in front of me. His name was Josh. And as he leaned back, I just released my hand. The tape stuck to his back, and he leaned forward, and all the answers to the test were sitting on his back. And as I took the test, it was the most confident that I ever was in Spanish. I didn't do well in that class, but on that one test, I was gangster. I had all the confidence in the world. And I think it was a great way of being able to do it. But imagine if you had all the answers to all the tests and you were able to do that and you weren't cheating. Like some people could call it cheating. I called it creative, creative thinking, problem solving, right? So sorry, Miss Looney, but I did it. In verse 8 is slow and steady, and sometimes lightning speed comes from a foundation of inchstones of wisdom. Slow and steady, and sometimes lightning speed come from the foundation of inchstones of wisdom. Little bit by little bit by little bit. My parents, it's crazy that they set me up for the interaction with Luke. And this was years before. When I was in 3rd, 4th grade, I remember my parents telling me these things. I remember my pops saying, there's only one business in the world, one business only, that's the people business. And you take the people out of the business, you have no business at all, boy. My mom would say, do the right thing. The truth will set you free. Be good to people. Make great friends. Become a great friend. They were setting me up. So when I interacted with Luke, and I had no idea that Luke was the CEO and president of Paul Mitchell. And by the way, he was the guy for that guy, and he was running multi other companies and not only brought Paul Mitchell to $1 billion business, but also a multi-billion-dollar business in Patron and others that went through. And you know who was the guy who was called on when things needed to be done? It was Luke. But Luke was just my friend because the little tiny inchstones that my parents put in place years and years ago that I had no idea that were going to come into fruition at that time. In verse 10 through 15, doing the right thing will always be honored. In verse 16, wisdom is the most valuable thing that you will ever invest in. Wisdom is the right use of knowledge, and I would suggest it at all costs. Verse 17, 31, and 32, silliness moves fast. Wisdom is in no rush because it moves with uncommon, unexplainable precision. Verse 20, read the instructions first, of which is to trust God. This is the ultimate cheat code. In verse 21, 23, 24, a heart full of wisdom produces gracious words that light the path. In verse 22, stop, breathe, and take thought of the future. You can thank me later for that one. In verse 33, God's ways are better. Are you trying or are you letting? You know, the funny thing is you got to love a God that is willing to give you all the answers before the test even arrives. But that's the challenge because a lot of times we don't see the test. But he keeps giving us the answers because he knows the test that is coming. Imagine if we just started to pay attention to the answers that were already there, we would be prepared for any test that came to us. My parents always encouraged me that they didn't know the answer, and although they did know someone who did, and they would direct my eyes to the Lord. Little did I know that these principles would help me to navigate one of the most iconic brands in the world, which was Paul Mitchell. Not with the accolades on my resume, but with the principle that my pops instilled. Boy, There's only one business in the world and one business only, and that's the people business. If you take the people out of the business, you'll have no business at all. This was the foundation of creating a relationship with Luke, who turned out to be the president and CEO of Paul Mitchell. Luke was responsible for growing Paul Mitchell from a couple of million in revenue into the billions. He also was very instrumental in helping JP, that's John Paul DeJoria, the guy with the ponytail, who you all think is Paul Mitchell, that is not, to help him to grow multiple other companies, including Patron Tequila that sold for $5.1 billion in 2018 to Bacardi. Luke once told me that his job title was the guy who would get stuff done for JP, his consigliere, as some people joked. Meeting Luke at 21 before I knew his credentials forged a friendship that granted the ability to text Luke years later. And see, I wouldn't have had that opportunity to be able to text him, and this text message changed everything for my business. I texted him and I said, hey, I would love to be able to understand my financials from a different realm. I had been in business for about 7 years, but I wanted to know it. I wanted to know it and I wanted to be able to grow it. So I reached out and I sent that text message out and said, would you be willing to mentor me? I swear it wasn't but 25 minutes. And Luke hit me back on text and said, absolutely, just send me your numbers and we'll meet every quarter. I was so shocked in a pinch me moment in this that I reached back out to him and I said, I didn't want to, bite the hand that was feeding me and, anything like that. But I followed up with a text like, Luke, you get these texts all the time. Why would you answer mine? Why would you agree? And I think back and I'm like, why didn't you just shut up and just accept the gift? But when I reached out to him, the funny thing is that what he said to me shook me. Because here I was, a business owner, and there's multiple salon owners all over the country, and Paul Mitchell being a multi-billion-dollar brand, there's so many people that could vie for his time. He's the president and CEO at the time of Paul Mitchell. And when I reached out and I said, would you be willing to go over and mentor me and go over my financials with me and help me to be able to grow my company? He texted back in 25 minutes, and when I asked him, why would you respond? You're one of the busiest guys in the world. And he said, because no one's ever asked me that. And I was shocked because most of the time we have the answers available, we have the love available, and God is right there with us. But a lot of times we just think that he's so busy that he can't take our call. And what Luke showed me was most of the time, 99% of the people just never ask anyway. So if you're willing to ask, you put yourself in the 1%. And I got to meet with Luke every quarter. It was over the course of probably maybe about a year. And it was wild because he took our company to just shy. We got over it a couple of times, but when we averaged it out, it was just shy of 30% profit margin. Now, some of you might think, well, 30%, I mean, that's pretty good, but why are you so excited? Because the national average in the professional beauty industry is 5%. So he's 6 times the profit margin in our company and set our company up to, which I didn't realize, but to be able to sell later on. But that happened, and I got the opportunity to be able to sit down with the president and CEO of Paul Mitchell, a multi-billion-dollar brand who ran other multi-billion-dollar brands also, because God created an opportunity to meet someone and make a friend in a guy named Luke. And I sit here humbled and thankful and so grateful. I reached out to him the other day. I wrote my newsletter. If you haven't got the newsletter, check it out on Substack. I wrote it out and I wrote about him. And then, I was able to make a cartoon of him and I that were walking through, and he had his arm around me because he would always help me in so many different ways. And I sent it out to him and I just said, I just want to thank you. I just want to thank you because you not only helped my business, you helped my family, you helped generations to come, and you helped me to understand things from a different plane. And when he took the calls and I sent him my financials, he looked over them. He didn't judge me. He didn't say, "Oh, you're doing this wrong or you're doing that wrong." He simply asked me questions. And in asking me questions, he started to draw out the things that were inside. And it was, I tell you, it was probably one of the most convicting things in the world because he knew the questions to ask. And that type of mentorship, think of that. This 21-year-old kid, I didn't even know I was going to own a business, but I meet a guy named Luke, and because we become friends years later, when I do have my business, probably 15 years later, and I do have my business and I need some help, Luke is there. It's crazy to see what is possible. See, I couldn't see that at 21. I couldn't see that I couldn't even see that. I didn't even know what Luke did. But God does. And God knows where he's going to go. God knows where he's going to be. And what my pops would always say to me is, you never know where someone's from. You never know where they're going. And you never know where you're going to meet up with them again. So make a friend out of everybody. And I am so glad, Luke, that I made a friend with you, man, because you impacted my life at such a high, high level. And when I'm around him and I joke with him, when I'm around you, Luke, and I joke with you about, the things that have gone on, you always seem to push those accolades to the side and you really want to know what's going on. You really, truly want to connect with people. And I believe that that's the reason why Paul Mitchell is the industry standard. It is the top in the professional beauty industry. It has been, it will be, because of the heart and soul and the people behind the brand. I can't thank you enough, man. My view of what was possible was limited. And that was most of the time because I was trying. I was trying to see this and trying to see that. And what I learned from Luke, not only from the financial side and the specifics, like, can you imagine what it would do for your company right now to be able to sit down with one of the most prominent brands in the world? Everyone knows what Paul Mitchell is. And sit down with their president and CEO and have them go over your financials and give you advice based off of not, some opinion that he has, but the authority that he has in building so many different brands. I didn't know what was possible, but God did. And I can tell you this, his ways are always better. I love you, Luke, and I want to thank you for our friendship. I want to thank you for the text message the other day. You are an absolute global treasure. And I'm proud, lucky, and humbled to be your friend. So what I want to invite you guys to do today is realize that when you're trying, then you're not letting. And God has a plan that's so much larger than you could ever imagine. And no matter where you're at, no matter what you've done, no matter what situation you're in, he wants you to know that he's working on your behalf. And he's going to bring a Luke into your life, but you got to be present for it. You got to be present right now in this moment. And there is a person, seriously, that can change your life. Or some of you are going to be that Luke for someone else. I want to thank you all for tuning in. It's been another episode of Inchstones. It's my absolute honor spending time with you. And if you, the greatest compliment you can ever give is to share the show with somebody. But first of all, I just want to thank you guys for listening. Check out the link in the bio too. I appreciate you. And my name is Kelly Cardenas, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.
Nothing more on my mind. I got two shines, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never know, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.